Hello, everybody. A very, very warm welcome to the Wine with Jimmy channel. Delighted to have you on board. This is a channel with lots of wine information and education designed to help those of you studying the world of wine to get more comprehension from it, to therefore enjoy it more and to pass your examinations with confidence, glowing confidence. Welcome to a series here on the D3 section, Wines of the World, for the WSET Level 4 Diploma. This is a video on southern Italy on the series of Puglia. And this is series 3. Series 3 on Puglia is split into 5 parts. And this is part 3, right in the middle, looking at the mightily important Primitivo grape variety and its key appellations. Expect, of course, full information about Primitivo, its history, its grape growing, its key styled, and its key appellations with a Google Earth video thrown in for good measure. This is the last of the free videos. Parts 4 and 5 will only be available on my e-learning portal. You'll find that at the bottom of the slide, winewithjimmy.com. You'll also find social media at the bottom of every slide as well. And if you do have a comment or a question, please pop it in the comments section below this video. Make sure you click like and you click subscribe. Okay, let's talk a bit about the history of Primitivo, because it has a mightily important past, both really quite ancient history and modern history. So we now today know that Primitivo's Croatian origins are true, so from Dalmatia, known as Tribidrag, and there are other variations and synonyms as well. The Croatian word of Tribidrag comes from the Greek, which means early ripening, which is certainly about it. And now if you think about Primitivo, the Italian for it comes from primitivus, which also means early. So this is the variety of early ripening named from this area in this map, Croatia, Dalmatia, and also in southern Italy, of course. So that's its early movement, moving from the Dalmatia area across to the Italian peninsula. In the 1970s, through a lot of ampelography and morphological research, it was thought to be the same variety as Zinfandel, which caused a bit of a stir in California, a bit of a problem. And then this was further backed up in 1994 by Carol Meredith, who you'll see in this picture, along with her doctoral candidate, John Bowers, at the UCD in California, the University of California, Davis. Now, this is important because at this point, there was only conjecture that it was Zinfandel, the same as Primitivo, and it was then proven that it is one and the same. So we track this grape from Croatia to southern Italy and then eventually across to California. And it's interesting because as a consequence of this research in the early 1990s, in 1999, the European Union granted Italian Primitivo producers the right to use the name Zinfandel. And of course, Californian producers were not happy about this, but being one and the same, of course, that can happen. Apparently, there's still no resolution along that as well. Some key information for you. Of course, it is early ripening, thus avoiding the autumnal rains. And we know all about the early ripening due to its etymology. Primitivo from primitivus, meaning early ripening. And then tribidrag, which comes from the Greek, meaning early ripening as well. It's productive, and for quality, it's better suited to poorer soils. It's prone to spring frosts, thankfully not a huge factor down here. And it's also prone to drought and has poor flowering and fruit set in rainy and humid years. Now, the biggest issue really out of all of those is drought. The variability of production level is something of a challenge for growers, and certainly in regard to supplying customers and in terms of cash flow. But one would say that Primitivo tends to be more of a consistent ripener than you would find with Zinfandel. And maybe that's to do with its more longer history and therefore evolution in this specific area in southern Italy. So there you are. Now, just to sort of recap that, in Puglia, the bunches of Primitivo are looser with smaller berries, giving them more disease resistance than Zinfandel, so therefore more consistency. But the bunches typically contain ripe and underripe fruit, meaning that rather strict sorting is required to produce high quality wine, and that adds to cost, of course. The variety itself accumulates sugar easy. Remember, it's an early ripener, and it therefore produces wines which can have fairly high alcohols. And it's quite typical to see them at 15 and even higher at 16% alcohol. The grapes also have a tendency to dry on the vine as the harvest is fast approaching. And this adds to that high alcohol. So therefore, growers will need to judge that picking date to avoid the high alcohols and also jammy characters. And to be honest, you will typically find quite a lot of, in the UK, sub £10 Primitivo from Puglia being quite jammy. This is your reasoning behind it. Now, older vines in Puglia are typically trained by Albarello bush vines, and they're at low density plantation, enabling good horizontal root networks to really soak up the little rainfall, but also providing some shade for fruit, which is important, of course, in areas with such a high amount of heat and sunlight. Primitivo has had mixed fortunes in recent decades. Many vineyards, including many old vines with high quality potential, were removed under the European Union vine pool scheme, a similar problem to what Garnacha has had in Spain. Since then, the variety has become a little bit more popular, partly through the success of its brother, its twin, I suppose, of Zinfandel over in California, with a lot of people now really understanding that it is one and the same. A little bit on the winemaking practices before we'll talk about the style. Normally, it's a varietal, and you will find it being a varietal typically here in Puglia, but can be blended, but more likely varietal, and similar in places like California as well. As mentioned, it can blend up to very high alcohols, up to 17%. Inexpensive wines are typically fermented, vinified at warm fermentation temperatures at macerations of about a week to extract good flavor, color, and medium to high levels of tannin. They are aged for a short amount of time, normally in stainless steel or large casks. And premium wines will, of course, have longer time on the skins for greater structure. They're often aged in things like French oak barriques for something like a year, which, of course, will add to the cost. Your style, then, your wines typically are quite intense on the nose. You'll find a towards pronounced nose of things like ripe to jammy red fruit. So that's why we've got strawberry jam, strawberries in the background, and also red cherries. Medium acidity, medium tannins. Now, that's an interesting one because they do tend to have quite soft tannins, and that's because we have an almighty warm summer, which then builds up a fair bit of tannin in the grape skins, and then a very quick autumn, where then the grapes are picked in August, of course. There's not really even an autumn, and this means polymerization of tannins are quick. and not necessarily fully complete to give structure. So as a result, Primitivo has nice ripe tannin, but not really structural tannins, not those quite kind of like ones you would expect with the likes of Nebbiolo or Sangiovese. The quality can be anywhere from acceptable to good. There are some good, very good examples and some outstanding ones too. Top producers will tend to be Polvonera, Fatalone, both of those in the Gioia del Colle, and also Gianfranca Fino in Primitivo di Manduria, and quite a few others as well. So let's talk about Primitivo di Manduria, a very key DOC. The landscape here is predominantly flat or just about lightly undulating, some very gentle slopes. You'll see it's this area in grey which sits to the east of Taranto, the old Greek city, to the south of Brindisi, and then to the west of the Florence of the south, remember Lecce. So it's this area around Manduria. There are the Terra Rossa iron-rich red soils here, on top of sands, clays, on top of limestone. It's one of Puglia's most well-known wines is Primitivo di Manduria, and we'll find that it's the oldest DOC for this variety, 1974, and it competes with the likes of Salice Salantino for the largest and most productive DOC in the whole of Puglia. There's a label here. That's the Gloria from Vigneti Reale. Primitivo di Manduria, you'll see clearly on the label. So the grape variety is named, of course, Primitivo di Manduria. So it's an 85% minimum typical in the EU, maximum yields of 63 hectolitres per hectare, and it must be aged for 2.5 years, including 9 months in wood. You'll find that there is also a minimum alcohol of 14%, which is quite easy for these to obtain. Gioia del Colle is our next one. So Gioia del Colle, this is a DOC lying to the south of Bari. So that's actually just this dot here, and this kind of orangey zone on this map. It's on the karst plateau of the Meurthe, and the appellation is primarily known for the production of Primitivo. The town of Gioia del Colle is historically considered the epicenter from which Primitivo spread from. So really maybe its spiritual birthplace. We will find that vineyards are here on gentle hills at elevations at about 200 to 450 meters. The soils are calcareous on iron-rich clays on limestone subsoils. The vineyards of Gioia del Colle are at a higher elevation than those of the very well-known Manduria, and therefore cooler with more significant diurnal temperature swings. They're also more hilly and also next to the sea. For these reasons, the wines of Gioia del Colle tend to possess more freshness and elegance in comparison to the Manduria wines, which are chunkier and richer. The red wine must compose of 50 to 60% Primitivo, although if Primitivo is stated on the label, it must be 100%. But if it isn't, it will be blended with multiple Ciano, Sangiovese, and or Negroamaro, and up to 10% Malvasia. Lower yields than in Manduria at 52 hectolitres per hectare, and the Reserva category will be aged for 2 years with no requirement in wood and a minimum alcohol of 14%. The excellent producer of Gioia del Colle here is Fatalone. Really, really high quality, and a Casanova, I suppose. So that's it. Let's have a look at a Google Earth video to bring this all to life, of course. And we're going to look at some wonderful sites as well, the very famous ports that one can find in this area. There's the region of Puglia, remember, stretching for about 400 kilometers along the heel of Italy. We're going to go to Brindisi, remember, at the end of the Via Appia, which connects to Rome, a really mightily important port city, Brindisi. Very gorgeous as well, as you can see. Lots of lovely port and also gorgeous parks around Brindisi. It really is quite special. So that's Brindisi, just to give you a human geographical feature. Heading to the other side, remember the Greeks established the city of Tarentum, which is today called Taranto, with its gorgeous port as well, over on the Ionian side. And there it is with its walled fortress, which is absolutely beautiful and very strategic. So that's Taranto. So in between Brindisi and Taranto, we have that lovely, lovely expansive area. Now, this is that karst plateau above it, and below it in this area is the flatter area called Primitivo di Manduria, which is around Manduria. Now, as you can see, pretty flat, and this is where we make some of the most powerful, really juicy, jammy expressions of Primitivo. Going towards the north, we find another coastal city of Bari. Really quite wonderful again. There you'll see. Yep, and this is given as another geographical location because we are heading to the north, and we're now going across towards the other important appellation for Primitivo, which sits just to the south of Bari, which is Gioia del Colle. So this is important for Primitivo-led styles, but you'll find Montepulciano, Sangiovese, and sometimes Malvasia here. But it's generally at higher altitudes. It's got a little bit more of that that continentality, and we find that the wines are a bit fresher produced in the Gioia del Colle. Look out for Fatalone, really great producer. Wonderful stuff. That brings me to the end of the presentation on Primitivo. Please do join me for the next video, which is on Negroamaro and its appellations. This will only be available, just like part 5 on Nero de Troia, as well as content on my e-learning portal. That's over at winewithjimmy.com. If you do have any comments, questions, or concerns, please do get in touch. You can do so by either commenting on this video below here on YouTube, or use the social media you see at the bottom of every slide. And if you do find yourself in the United Kingdom, then please come and say hi at one of my establishments for a class, a glass, or a bottle. I've been Jimmy Smith. Ciao for now. Bye-bye.